Ladies and gentlemen, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. Mr. Alex Fair is the founder of MedStartr, and if you get an email from him and you see his electronic signature, he's got like a dozen things underneath it. What's that all about? Focus, man, focus.
It's all actually focused on one thing. I mean, so even though it looks like there's a lot of things, they're just different iterations of the same idea. You know,
And the idea is,
the idea is that I'm not that smart. Sorry, folks. I depend upon the wisdom of crowds.
you
So
need to
not an
work on your pitch a little bit.
well, that's part of the
Tell
pitch.
folks what you do, please.
So I run this company called MedStartr. MedStartr started out as a meetup group back in 2009, and it just accreted so many amazing people, similar to what you do, Joe. Um, but we would do in-person events like you, but we would do lots of small ones, and then we started moving around the country, and then we opened up a crowdfunding site called MedStartr.com, which is leading crowdfunding site for medical innovations. Lots of great companies you guys know, went through that initially. So a company like Medable has done pretty well. Misfit Wearables came through it. So a lot of companies got found and funded faster through the site. And I set it up initially for my own creation, a company called FairCare, which was like a price transparency site. And I went to go get it funded, even though I'd already had millions of people to the site. I was looking, for a little funding, a little support, things like that. And I learned the first rule of crowdfunding, which is if you can't get people to crowdfund something, you might want to go back to the drawing board. So in this case, we had set up two campaigns on the initial site, one for FairCare and one for MedStartr.com. And a lot of people funded, like 121 people funded MedStartr, and only one person funded FairCare, and that was my cousin, so it really didn't count. So the effect, one of the first things we learned is that if companies do, or if ideas do well on our crowdfunding site, then we should probably, put some time, energy, effort, money into that. So we switched the team from FairCare to MedStartr and started just helping startups. We had been helping startups for years. So companies like Able2 and ZocDoc, had come through our meetup group, and just amazing people would get involved and help the startups. And also discuss important topics and things like that. So, we had
Did
a
you
good
just
night.
suggest that, can I infer that part of ZocDoc's success can be attributed to your
No,
platform?
no. Cyrus and Oliver, extremely focused entrepreneurs here in New York. They actually came in as a sponsor early days, but they probably hired some people out of the group or what have you. There's about 5 or 6 different things that usually happen at an event, as you probably know. I mean, but some of it's recruiting, a lot of it is awareness, partnerships, funding, and all sorts of other stuff. Some of which not business related, but is good for people. Because
You
you
said
need to.
something I'm intrigued by. You said if a company doesn't do well in a crowdfunding site, it may not be a great concept.
Well, crowdfunding in healthcare is particularly challenging, right? The reason I started MedStartr is at the time Kickstarter was pretty popular, and Indiegogo had just begun or begun to get popular, but there weren't any successful healthcare crowdfunding projects on any of these sites. Um,
Expanded.
Occasionally, you'd find a medical device like the Lumen device and Kinza. Both came from crowdfunding back in the early days. Even the most famous one was that watch, the Pebble watch. Um,
Well, to me, it was Scanadu,
Scanadu is good too. Yeah, that was a little bit later.
and then
So
they went bust.
yeah, well, that happens to a lot of crowd-funded ideas. I mean, getting the support of a crowd is an important key step, but it's not the only step. Um, Obviously, you have to be able to run with the ball once you catch it, right?
Mhm.
So, but it's a great indicator. And the problem with traditional crowdfunding sites for healthcare innovations is the sale is indirect, or you need $1 billion to do it, or the consumer, the patient, the ultimate consumer, isn't the one who actually ever expects to pay for anything.
Right.
So their insurance plan is going to pay for it, or the hospital is going to have to install it. It's not like I can buy a stent and put it in myself. So the important thing, and the reason that MedStartr is so successful, was because the crowd that comes to our events and our sites and programs and invest in our startups, they're healthcare folks. They're people like, you and me and genius engineers and people who run hospitals and people who run insurance plans and other inspired founders, passionistas, people like Katie.
When you say the reason MedStartr is so successful, can you quantify that for us? It's
Yeah,
easy to
and
say successful.
so that is a very good question.
Thanks.
Um, so 2015, I think Entrepreneur Magazine said 5 things that are going to happen in crowdfunding. And now there's an initial burst of crowdfunding sites in 2012 when we launched something like 800 sites. I know because we built like 30 of them. And also in the space. Well, I mean, we were outsourced development firm as well. So, while we were searching around for a business model, we did a bunch of other things. And having been a software developer, project manager, CIO, CTO, whatever, for most of my adult life, it was a natural fit that as soon as somebody saw MedStartr as a niche crowdfunding site, they'd say, "I want one of those." So we helped build a lot of them. But that's not about the article. The article basically said that 5 things are going to happen in crowdfunding, and the first thing is they said, which is not necessarily a good thing, but as they say, even bad press is good. Niche crowdfunding sites like MedStartr, which they mentioned us by name, which is always fun, are going to go away because the big guys, the Kickstarters and Indiegogos of the world, are going to just eat them up, and that's definitely true, and it definitely
Beat them up
happened.
by beating them in the marketplace or buy them out?
Well, it's you need a crowd, right? You need to have a large group of people. So if 10,000 people come and visit one of our projects and 1 to 2% of them actually fund it or get involved, that's actually pretty good numbers, but that's still only like 100 people. And that's not enough to raise $20 million usually.
Right.
Although what happens is that crowd validation is a signal to the investors and big pharma and everybody waiting in the wings, circling and looking for good ideas that are getting traction, that will then click on the contact us button. So actually on the MedStartr.com site, there's actually 17 different ways that people can engage with the ideas and the projects, everything from like, share, follow to pilot, partner, invest. And we watch it all. And we capture all that data, and we get to have the benefit of that knowledge before we get involved with the company. So anyway, so the third thing they said in that article, I forget what the other 3 were, was that companies that can't get crowdfunded probably won't be able to get venture funded. And while this is not entirely true, there, like most things, there's some truth in it. So as I was saying, the crowd gives a signal. And going back to my very first statement that I'm not that smart, it's true. I cannot predict myself which company is going to be successful and which ones aren't. But I do have the help of a stadium full of people who will come to our site, get involved, look at things, not click or do click, message the founders, have good conversations, invest offline often, start pilots, partnerships, conversations. So just like if you were at one of your big events that you used to do, and I'm sure you'll do again, if you could sort of keep track of all the conversations going on, you would have an insane amount of market intelligence on what was happening in the industry. So as you know, insider trading in publicly traded companies is totally illegal, and there's a reason for that. But it's completely legal in venture capital and private equity and things like that. So after watching we did a retrospective analysis on all the teams that had come through the platform and done well at our events, and we started running contests for the AHA, the AMA, Oshner, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Takeda. So we started we've been doing agency-like services to run open innovation programs for lots of big companies. Actually, GE put us up to initially wanted to use the crowdfunding site as a way to tell which companies were most likely to be successful. So we created this crowd challenge format and platform, and we started having contests where we would throw out the gauntlet for, we want to see a diabetes innovation or something to help people with depression or cardiovascular disease. And the companies that would win those contests, companies like Medable, might have been a 2-person startup.
Site that chronicles one of those events.
Pardon me?
you have something on the MedStartr site, perhaps in the blog, the archives, that talk about the diabetes one and who won and how it, that kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, every time we've done probably 70 contests now, and after every contest, we publish the winners, and there's some things like that. I don't know if we've done a case study that we published online, but I could dig one up and put it in the chat box or send it to the.
Yeah, I put in the chat box from medicaldevicesgroup.net all of the stories and articles among the 1,000 that we've got there that have to do with funding,
Mhm.
some of which were about crowdfunding.
Right.
So I'm looking at crowd challenges. So it's MedStartr without the E. I'll put this in the.
So the one that we're doing right now is so we actually we're always innovating in the ways to find and to engage everybody in these contests. And one of the things about the contest that happens is that the people interested in that space aggregate at the site. And going back to my original point about why crowdfunding doesn't always work that well for healthcare startups is because the crowd isn't the right crowd, right? So the right crowd comes to medstartr.com, comes to our events, and people like Katie and our MedStartr Mentor Network. Oh, there we go. So yeah, this is the contest that's going on right now, 2021 Vision Challenge, and it's been great. We've gotten hundreds of companies apply,
So
and
it says to be qualified for the fourth semifinals to be held on the 2nd, which was 2 days ago.
yeah, so we did that Wednesday. So
Is there any
and
video or anything that we can see?
you could go to what do you call it?
Here's the last pitch contest video.
Yep.
See what that.
We might not have updated that yet.
Womp womp.
So I'll drop a link into the chat box.
Please.
So sorry, I gotta open up another window. So anyway, so we televise all of them, and there was a problem with the MedStartr. So here are some of the projects that are actually on the site. Not everybody goes on the site during the contest. We enable a short application as well because honestly, we make a very difficult application generally.
Did you say difficult or typical?
Difficult. Okay. This link wasn't working right the other day, so let's try it though.
Can you tell me what I'm looking at here? A 57 MedStartr index score. What does that mean?
It's sort of a simplified version of our crowd metrics. So
this guy has a 57. He's gotten $100.
Yeah, so
150,000.
Exactly. So the amount of money that goes through the site. So Pregnabit actually took second place in one of the earlier heats. So we gather data from the pitch events as well. So I think in that one we had about 14 experts in the space rated. So if you click on the Pregnabit site, for example, you'll see that this is, I believe, it's an ultrasound device for at-home use, and people can stay very connected to their babies. And if you see on the site, there's lots of options of how to engage with the ideas. Anybody who's registered on the site that says that they're interested in these particular areas, or any of the other keywords that they can select, will then get notified as soon as new ideas come on into their space. If you scroll down, you can actually see the people who are interested in the project. You can read everything about it, and basically get all the information that you might want about a startup in its early phases. You can there's actually a whole data room. So if you request access to the data room, the user, the project creator, can then give you access to much deeper data than if you're doing due diligence. On the right side is a feedback form, which a lot of people do, which tell us, what people actually think about the ideas. And we do our contests. They fill out a similar form, which, tells us, what people really think about the projects. So that's all of,
good. I'm a supporter, but I'm also ridiculously candid. I'm looking at this and I'm saying there are 27 days left. He's collected $50 of $1 million. This does not inspire confidence. This does not make me say, as someone who has a project, ooh, I got to get on this site. I mean,
exactly.
the other guy who's doing twice as well has raised $100. I'm not feeling the love here. How much traffic are we talking about, and how many things have been funded on your site?
So yeah, it's these days it's rare that people put a lot of money into projects. I think crowdfunding had its moment where people could, do serious fundraising, and we've had people raise, $130,000 on the site. But what
Is
happens
that the high
often,
watermark?
yeah, pretty much.
And was that
But what,
enough to close the, this guy is
oh,
asking
oh
about
no,
his $150.
right. So one of the challenges we see, and I'm not really sure how to solve it, is that people want to get a lot more information before they put real money into a project.
Hmm.
So what starts here on MedStartr doesn't stay here. So for example, um, uh, Alert G. Oh, that's not that great an example. Um, the biggest one we could talk about probably is Misfit Wearables. Misfit Wearables was started by Sunny, who is the same guy who created Ecomatrix. Um, that's the application itself. Um, so like I was saying, the application's a little difficult. So he did on a project that we created for him so we partnered up with Indiegogo early on. And so we developed his project for him, and he got his first 8,000 Misfit wearable devices, which was like a early Fitbit that was very pretty. Um, and Okay, so here, when you log in, it's going to ask you who you are and what areas you're interested in. So you would click on medical devices and whatever else you're interested in, and then it would automatically start sending you projects, that
I
fit
might want to
criteria.
fund.
You'll find interesting. You could follow, what have you. But getting back to your question of, the funding level, it is disappointing that people don't throw money into the projects from the site, but it's also understandable human nature because that's a level of commitment that not everybody's ready to do. So even if you do get the due diligence documents, you still want to talk to the people, you still want to, have that conversation. And while there are equity crowdfunding sites that do okay, honestly, I'm just looking for as much data as we can get on who likes the ideas. And here's the kicker, companies like Misfit that raise money and sell devices go on to raise much more money offline, and then we can participate in those deals as well as other people who come to the site. So Misfit, famously, they did about 890,000 through Indiegogo in a couple of weeks, sold their first 8,000 devices, and then they had John Scully join their board. So this is the application process, Joe.
Hmm.
Um, and so they blew up. They went to production with their devices. They shipped. And then I think 15 months later, no, it was 30 months later, they got bought for $240 million by Fossil Watch. And so we looked at all of the companies that had come through the site and done well on the platform. And by well, I don't always mean raising $800,000. It could be winning a contest, getting a lot of likes, getting follows, oftentimes partnerships and pilots. Would be the conversation would be started, but of course it's not closed. I mean, Medtronic isn't going to, click on a project on MedStartr and say, I am going to do this pilot with you. They'll say, I'm interested in a pilot, and we watch that. Um, so so the question that people have asked me is why have the money there at all? Just like your initial reaction, it looks kind of stupid, right?
I didn't say
But
stupid.
well, I think it does, and that's what other people have told me. And so if you look, we've actually de-emphasized the actual crowdfunding aspect of it, the dollars, and that's why we show the index score, which is about likes and follows and pilots partnerships. It basically collects all of the data, and it gives the viewer, a quick snapshot saying, okay, this company is getting some interest, right? So, and honestly, if they don't raise any money at all, then the financial options don't even show up. Because most,
Alex, when we talked before, you threw out some numbers that you needn't share here that were rather impressive about how much money you have been able to earn through this venture. Um,
well, I wouldn't say it's been, a roaring success from a financial standpoint for Alex Fair or our investors. But
okay, so there were seven-figure numbers that you threw around before. Did
yes.
I
So let me
misunderstand you?
let me explain.
Okay.
So initially, like I said, we did agency services and we did websites, we did all sorts of stuff like that. And but we were passionate about helping the startups. And so everything that we did was about that. So we would, my brother, calls me the schmuck of healthcare because I would always be sort of giving away what other people would be charging, 3% of their company for
We really
accelerating.
need to work on your marketing copy.
Tell me about it.
Go on.
Um, so, so, but we had looked at all the companies that had come through, and a lot of them had been very successful. And so I said, we should be investing in these companies. If we did the math on the companies that, if we'd invested so we took the first 2,600 companies that came through the platform, and we did analysis based on these early metrics we had. We called MedStartr metrics at the time. And we took just the top 3%. So it was only like 76 companies by those metrics. And if we had invested in just the top 3% without doing any due diligence whatsoever, the rate of return would have been something like 186% per year, with a bunch of really big exits, something like $400 million in additional investment in these companies that collectively had only raised a few $1 million, through the platform or during the contests. So it was kind of a no-brainer that we should open up a venture fund. And having no experience in the space, I read a couple of books on the subject. I made the first fund just with my own money, and I invested in 4 companies, and that was back in 2017. And those companies have done quite well. So you've heard of some of them. Triage, went from 1 hospital to over 100 hospitals for their um, emergency room ambulance connection platform. It's one of the bigger, better space companies in the space now. Carenware just passed, I believe, $60 million in sales. We invested in them at a pretty low valuation. They make medical clothing that people love. For example, a gown that closes in the back. I mean, simple but great. But they also partner with great designers, and they were at the right place at the right time. Because when COVID happened, they were ready to scale up production and sold a lot of PPE, still selling a lot of PPE.
If any of the folks on the call have had to raise money for their company before, would you raise your hand? I might want to invite you on. And Shabir, if you have access to microphone and camera, I'll want to bring you on because I know that you seek to raise money and you'll be speaking in January. But I'm wondering, and Jonathan Saul, I imagine you've done some of it as well. Well, there's his hand.
So anyway, so fund 1 was just me. And then when that was showing a doubling of value in the first year, I brought in a couple other people with more experience in the space, including my brother. And they went out and raised a lot more money. And then we started running contests regularly around the country. And now we've got 9 companies where we invested in 13 deals. And that is what we're talking about, how we've done very well in the space. So the companies we've invested in have gone on to be very successful, on average doubling every year, but a couple of them, in the 50 to 100x range in terms of valuation from the money invested. So on paper, we're doing great. And our investors are very happy, investors in the fund. So we're closing fund 2. We're going to open fund 3 early next year. And just keep on, scaling up the model. So
the fund is independent from anything I showed the kind folks at home from your site.
So the fund is basically a customer of all that data. So the fund sponsors events and pays for the acceleration of companies because we run an accelerator as well. So when we invest in a company, we also get additional stock from the companies in exchange for accelerating them. So
that I'm trying to think linearly about this. I was thinking about MedStartr as the starting point, and from that, other things have happened.
Right. So the real business is the venture fund.
I think you're hearing you say that there is a fund that's doing well.
Yes.
And because it's doing well, it can do things like MedStartr challenges and the like, and generate information that is helpful to the investors in the fund.
Well, helpful to the fund, and the investors invest in the fund. So the way this really works is that we're capturing the wisdom of crowds about healthcare startups, and then our own venture fund invests in those companies. Mm-hmm. So limited partners. So if anybody is interested in investing, they're accredited investor, they can invest in fund 2 right now, and they can get the benefit of our industry leading return on investment calculations. They're just calculations at this point because no significant exits have happened. And but we expect that to start happening in 2021, and distributing from Fund 2.
I'm looking at the site under investing. Would I look under MedStartr Ventures to
I'll
learn about the fund?
yeah, go to medstarter.vc.
Yeah, that's where it's taken me. Okay, here I am.
So if you go to the portfolio, you'll see some of the teams we invested in, and they've done really well. So Miami was our fourth investment from that first batch, or third investment. They have a digital therapeutic that works better than prednisone, and they've been adopted by Oscar and Humana, and a couple other companies are in the pipeline. But they're doing great. We're very proud of them, and they're the one. They actually raised $136,000 on the site. They got 2 pilots, 3 partnerships. And I believe,
This is not cool. You're not giving me a way to X out.
yeah, it's there. It's just can't see it. Yeah,
It's there, you just can't see it.
So,
can you share a little bit of the life cycle in relation to the various companies that come in? I mean, are you getting companies that have been around for a while and now finally they feel like they're close to having a commercialized product versus pure startup, like this is an idea on the back of a piece of paper?
Oh yeah, so most of these companies are cash flow positive, revenue producing.
Okay.
Valera Health is a great mental health telehealth solution led by Tom Sang, a physician that we've known for 20 years. Also was one of the authors of CCHIT. AlertG is in their 4th generation CGM, continuous glucose monitor that uses radio frequency and dielectric spectroscopy with a really amazing antenna that works better than any other antenna. So basically, it fits on a watch and can tell you your blood glucose without a needle. So they're in talks with a lot of suitors right now, and that we're hoping that that'll be our first exit. And so their product is really getting close. Karenware is the company that's over $60 million in sales so far this year, up from $2.5 million last year. So they're doing great. Obviously, this was a great opportunity for them. One of our mentors actually joined the team in April. We scaled up their production to like 15 factories, just because that's her expertise, and that's part of our model, is that our mentors get involved with the companies, and sometimes even join.
That's what I was going to ask. Is what's your sweet spot where you can add the most value?
That's a great question. So me and my team, have tons of experience in building companies, and we've got this immense network of people who are experts in all these different areas. So we run an acceleration program. It's a 3-year program. So an early stage company that comes to us, like AlertG, that has a prototype that's wearable, that's the size of a refrigerator, we help them, get their story together, build their team, give advice on, how to present and what to do. In AlertG's case, we've taken it even further into more of an investment banker role, where we've been the ones introducing them to over 35 different strategic, acquiring type companies. So in AlertG's case, we took them from having this gigantic, oscilloscope and spectroscope based machine, down to a wearable that they now have a contract to produce units for the Army, the Flex program. And we're bringing them to the big players in glucose now, and getting those doors opened and starting those conversations. And we also have all these partners that when we invest in a company, they get involved. So whether it's lawyers or accounting and things like that. So these are the guys. So Rob, for example, just sold his company to Sotheby's. He's a real estate guy, but he's amazing at sort of strategic thinking. We've got physicians, we've got polymaths and producers and people who run funds and things like that.
Libby.
Yeah, I love Libby. She's been my mentor in starting a venture fund. I mean, she sold out hers years ago, but she's right here in New York.
Farmer? She sold?
No, not Farmer. This is a fund. This is like 8 years ago.
She's a 10Xer. She presented at one.
Yeah, no, she's fantastic. But she's when I first, I didn't know nothing about running a venture fund. I'm a scientist. So I had all the data. I saw that there were patterns in the data, and I said we can go do something. And so she kind of gave me sort of the overview and has been somebody that I could just go to and say, hey, what do you do in this situation? So she's a mentor to me personally.
Mhm.
And that's most of the people on that list are folks like that. Ben Choder, is a huge telecom player, but he also started Haptique, which was one of the first app stores for medical devices.
Alex, let me do this. As you know, and certainly it's been the case for our last half hour or so, I enjoy just kind of letting the conversation go where it goes. I will say I'm getting a little tighter on the axle because we've been rather circuitous. I'm going to ask you to be linear in a bit, but before I do, Lucia, you raised your hand. You wanted to contribute something. Why don't you take yourself off mute and share that now?
Yeah, sure. No, I've certainly been through the fundraising process myself. I was chief medical officer of an early stage company that I joined as a co-founder, and we went through seed Series A before the company went through a merger for Series B investment. And ever since, I've been advising for California Life Science Institute, FAST Advisory Program, Mass Bio, and Springboard Enterprises. So I'm pretty well entrenched in the innovation and fundraising space. And yeah, I mean, I think, the value of the platform like this is certainly coming from, putting my startup founder hat on, or even my startup advisor hat on. If somebody asked me, should I join this? My advice to them would be, if you join it, it's not going to be because you're going to get money out of this program. And what it really depends on is how robust their network is in terms of other VCs, because one of the most difficult things for an early stage company to get is in front of VCs, and have the opportunity to pitch. And so if those introductions can be made, I think that's certainly of value. Winning the contests is kind of, it can be helpful, but it's
PR.
You have to have a pretty really.
Well, what you don't see there, Lucia,
Yeah.
Sorry, Lucia, is we use the contest as our due diligence first step. So as soon as you win the contest or even place or show, you'll be asked to fill up your data room, and then within a week, or two sometimes, depending on how many people we have to go through, we'll actually evaluate you for an investment from our fund. So our initial check is usually $100,000. And we also do bring them to our, co-investors and partner VCs and things like that. So that often results in additional funding. Plus, once you have the MedStartr brand, if every single MedStartr company we've invested in has doubled at least in the first year, and a lot of them have done a lot more, it's becoming sort of like it's a good thing. So I totally agree with you. Getting funded on the site is not really what it's all about. It's about awareness, engagement, some funding from us if you make it through the other due diligence steps. In that first 76 companies we looked at, we did zero due diligence. We just said, hey, what have you become what would the numbers say if we didn't even do any due diligence? We didn't even know how to do due diligence at the time. But now it's even better than that 186% returns that we predicted. Depending on how you do the math, we could say 700%, but we're very conservative about it. So, it runs in the high 100%.
So how do you get more experts to get onto your platform aside from this type of dialogue? How do you motivate them to engage? How do you motivate them to keep providing data and insight as to, well, yeah, I think they could succeed, or no, there's just too many roadblocks for their technology to be successful? How do you get the crowd to be more engaged, and how do you get the crowd bigger, given it's not the same kind of crowdfunding dynamic from a consumer perspective as like Indiegogo or Kickstarter?
Right.
Let me add, please, first, that I think that the concept of crowdfunding, which has largely been, oh, you mean Kickstarter, GoFundMe, Indiegogo, and consumer driven, because that's the way we think of that term, even in the medical device arena. When I, up until this morning, thought of MedStartr as a crowdfunding place, I thought, the point is people come and invest. But that's not what's happening. And I wonder if if we need a new way to frame your value proposition, here I am being a
Yeah,
marketing
maybe there's
consultant.
another currency that would be much more valuable.
Perhaps
Absolutely.
emphasizing the accelerator portion, and
Mhm.
emphasizing the mentoring structure around there.
More
And
about the incubator than it is about.
yeah,
Yeah, so
and the ability to make those introductions. And it does seem like I'd be curious to know more about the life cycle of the products that you're doing, because it seems like most of them are actually health tech apps versus a true, medical device that's going to require, de novo PMA pathway, significant, life cycle prior to revenue generation. And, if you have any kind of investment thesis around the types of company that you're taking in, and then how that drives, because $100,000 is a lot different thing for a wearable than it is for a device that's looking at having to conduct clinical trials.
Let me bring Shabir in, A, because he may or may not have connectivity in about 5 minutes, and B, because that's a great hat, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
What are you working on, and how does it relate to, I know that your project is not a wearable. It's a much bigger thing and would require many millions. Please tell us about it.
Sure. So I represent Fisher Imaging. We're a medical imaging company specific to mammography for breast cancer detection. And so we're working on a couple of different fronts. We're trying to solve this problem that has become front and center now. Mammography fails to detect cancer in about half the population because of what's known as the dense breast issue. And so we have a couple of products under development. One is to basically fix the problem that is there with mammography, which is a lack of resolution and a lack of contrast, because as you may or may not know, finding breast cancer is kind of like finding a snowball in a snowstorm. It's one of the most challenging radiological applications out there.
Shabir,
So that's,
I'm going to condense just a little bit.
yeah.
You were our guest on January 8th. We'll talk
Yes.
a great deal about your technology, the challenges, and what you need in the line.
Sure.
As it relates to Alex's value proposition,
Well,
like yours, do you see a way that he could help?
yeah, so thank you. So yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is and I think this is where Alex, your the MedStartr might be of help, is getting buy-in, because we're going into an area where thoughts and practices are very entrenched. People don't want to change. So getting the feedback, what I heard you say was that you can get more than the money. It's the opinion. It's how it's going to do in the marketplace. What are features that people like, don't like? What are the aspects of the product that would be important? And whether a new technology such as ours fits into the clinical workflow.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's an old proverb, which is if you want to go, fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, bring the tribe, right? So what you want to do is you want to get a crowd behind you. To do anything of value, you really need sort of I don't want to say necessarily bottom up, because it's really bottom up and top down, but you need the clinicians and the patients say, hey, yeah, this is something that would be very valuable. I'd love to be able to visualize the inside of the breast without actually getting irradiated or whatever it is that you guys are doing. There's a lot of really, amazing new ideas that that we've seen come through the platform, but also just lately, I mean, half of all the companies that apply to be on our platform, and usually the winners are some sort of medical device that just has rethought something in a way that nobody else did before. I mean, I call it the geek to freak to hero, tour, because some physician or person who, engineer, who, has some crazy idea, says, I'm going to go do that. And then they've hit this brick wall of the entrenched methodologies that already exist. So, one of my favorite examples is the dialysis machines, right? So you can make a dialysis machine that fits on your weight, on your, fanny pack, and do it at home or walk around with it, or even one the size of a microwave. But for years, there's, all the dialysis centers, and they're not exactly enabling innovation, right? So the same thing is true for hospitals. But I remember when we first began, in actually a talk that I gave called Geek to Freak to Hero out at Stanford, I made fun of hospitals for never getting involved in innovation. They're always sort of like the stalwarts, the incumbents. But
They don't
nowadays,
have time.
well, it's not that of time, it's their incentives are different.
Yeah, yeah,
So they want to be known for being the center that comes up with innovations, things like that.
correct.
But nowadays, they want to be known as centers of innovation themselves and places that will take their, deactivated ICU and turn it into a innovation center. So if you look at Texas Medical Center, they did this, Melbourne Hospital, obviously the whole node network, that my friend Ashish Atreja set up. And then now the Kids X Accelerator out of that Omar is doing in California. The hospitals are really on board with this. Oshner is one of our clients. We found our fourth investment, AlertG, running a diabetes challenge for them. And so really the incumbents are a lot of them are coming in and being very involved in innovation, but they're very selective. I mean, the reason GE came to us in the first place is because they knew that they weren't as good at picking the winners as my crowd was, right? That they wanted a way that they could bring patients and doctors into the discussion. If you look at who controls investing in innovation, traditionally, it was always big pharma. It was like something like 42% was all coming, I think, from big pharma of all innovation investing. And they're businesses. And so they get it and they see it. But really doctors and patients had no say. So one of the bases of the MedStartr model is that the people, the stakeholders, the true stakeholders, the people who actually are going to get better or help make people better, can get involved and say, yes, I like that. And that is one of the key indicators that we see. And then not just us, but the people who are looking for pilots, right? Looking for new ideas to try out in their center. So when Miami, which was our third investment, they got three partnerships and 2 pilot conversations started through the platform during a 5-week campaign on MedStartr. In addition, $136,000 of investments. So this was an idea that had been around for 5 years. And Meta Dyerberg, amazing woman, strong entrepreneur, very focused, had lupus herself, cured herself and 70 other people. I don't want to say cured is not the right word. Put her lupus into remission. People who couldn't have children because they were on high-dose prednisone had children. People who were living much better lives, but she still hadn't turned it into a business, right? But then a guy by the name of Dan Rothman joined her. I had actually helped him get a job at this company called CityMD, which was bought by Warburg Pincus for $600 million a couple years later. But Dan joined her, and Dan's a real hustler, really great at doing everything you need to do to run a startup. And together they made a really great package. And the people who got involved in their project on MedStartr were people with lupus. So Tiffany Peterson, one of our MedStartr mentors, who runs this thing called Lupus Chat, which had like 40,000 followers on Twitter every week, she backed the project. And then her followers came in. And then that was a strong signal. Go ahead.
So getting the right people for us. I mean, we just went through an NIH-sponsored I-Core program. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we had to interview clinicians and radiologists and stakeholders and surgeons and things like that. And one of the hardest things I've done in my life is just getting them to talk. And I see your platform as perhaps an ideal way of getting that kind of feedback, getting that kind of input.
It's an excellent way to do that. And when you start a project on MedStartr, we're going to send you Medmo tips. Medmo is not just on the t-shirt, it's short for MedStartr Momentum. And the thing is that once you start to accrete some of this momentum, we're going to tell you 100 different things to do to increase that momentum. To go out to the people you already know, then to go on social media and to do this. And we give you sample tweets. And if you use the platform and you click on any of those social sharing, it actually auto writes your tweet. Why? Because when you're doing that long, very difficult application, we're actually making you break your ideas down into little itty bitty bits. So then those can be shared, set up on SEO.
Yeah, as you can tell, that's a hard thing for me to do.
Look, we are, I totally understand that. I have that problem too. And here's the thing, we went to med school, grad school, did PhDs in engineering, whatever. We didn't work on Madison Avenue. We don't know how to sell stuff. We know how to build stuff, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's why I go to Joe.
Exactly. So Joe, me, whatever. So, and there are tons of platforms like that that are all here to help, all want to do one thing. But what we've done is we've taken all the successes on MedStartr, watched them, we keep adding new stuff too, and said, hey, how did you get your idea out to market? So we started out with Eric Majikovsky, who created the Pebble Watch, and he interviewed him back in 2012. And that was the beginning of our, here's how you go get funded. But then we also took Fred Trotter, Regina Holiday, and all these amazing folks who did well on the platform. We basically every day will send you something saying, hey, here's what you should do. Here's what you should do. Because, it's a training program. So that's like the automatic stuff that we do. But then once we invest in the company, we then will actually do the introductions. We'll reach out to, every company or every VC in that space to help them. We'll also sit you down for a week. Now we do it virtually. And we'll give you 40 hours of training on everything you need to do a startup, bring in some of our best mentors. One of them is Richard Park, the guy who started CDMD, who I've known, since my son fell on my daughter's ankle and broke her ankle when she was like 7.
Alex,
He happened to be the doctor that we went to.
I want to give John a chance. You had a question to ask John?
Yeah, I'm curious. Well, 3 questions really. Is the NDA, does it become a moot point once individuals post their idea to MedStartr? Does that jeopardize the IP or whatever IP might be involved?
Did I answer them one at a time?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a massively public thing. Tens of thousands of people are likely to see your project if it does well. We make people practice, safe startups, right? So if you do not have at least a provisional patent with some time on it, or a patent, pending, or you're keeping trade secrets, we don't let people, go live on the platform unless they've got some sort of IP protection. I've been there myself. I've started 10 companies. I've had my stuff stolen. I've had my stuff given away, and I've won. In some cases too. But yeah, we don't want anybody to find themselves in a bad situation because of us.
I'm also curious. I've discovered an unmet and unrecognized medical need of a fairly common procedure. What percentage of your audience are clinicians, would you say?
It depends on the contest. I mean, we did a contest for the American Medical Association. Obviously, in that contest, 60% of the 6,700 people who registered in that 5-week period were residents or physicians. I'd say in general, it runs in the 20 to 30 range. If you look, I dropped a link to the MedStartr Mentor Network, and that's really just a fraction of our mentors. It's a couple hundred of them. But you can see that, physicians love this stuff. And we've been running physician-focused events for years. And actually, if you look at the T-shirt, I always go back to the T-shirt. No, but this is our symbol, right? So the 4 stakeholders, the plus sign is really 4 stakeholders holding hands. And it's physicians, patients, and 2 others that I don't really care as much about. No, I'm kidding.
I wrote a book once, and the guy that made the T-shirts that were worn by the clerks in the store over Christmas season made more money than I made from the book. The 4th question, perhaps, is more of a pure selfish. Can I pitch you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's if one of the links here is to the contest. So we've actually had 39 teams on stage in the last in the last 2 months, all trying to win our 2021 vision contest, which basically the end of it is we invest $100,000 in the winner. But we also might invest $100,000 in half a dozen of the other winners. Anyway, so after each heat, 2 teams emerge, most of which actually wind up being medical devices. I don't know why. And then the top 2 teams from each heat, plus 2 wildcards, will get into the contest on the 16th. So if you follow that Medmo 2021 vision, we were going to call it 2020 vision just because it's funnier, but nobody really wants to look at 2020.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Anyway, so we're trying to look into the future.
Well, congratulations on what you've done, and it's been real interesting.
Yeah, I'll copy that link into the box again, just in case it's not prevalent.
Alex, are you familiar with the Innovator MD group?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. Yeah, as I say,
isn't that what's his head in San Mateo?
Yeah.
He's a regular guy that we talked to. I actually pitched there a couple years ago. It's actually on his website.
Excellent.
Anyway.
Alex, with vaccines, traditionally taking 8 years or more. I think the fastest before COVID was 4 years, and now we're seeing multiple vaccines come to market so quickly. What other types of accelerations are you seeing in the market because of COVID?
That is a great question. So I dropped the 2021 vision application link. Anybody who's interested, we'd love to see more. And if we have way too many companies that are great, we actually could do another heat. We haven't decided yet. So what the big thing that's happened, it happened to all of our startups, and even us as a company, is that when this crisis hit, you'd think that sort of innovation would shut down, right? It didn't. It just sort of like turned 90 degrees and said, I'm going to go try to solve for COVID-19. So we saw amazing people and companies like Tal Gively from MedVisor, who has this amazing knowledge app, created a COVID tracking and tracing app for Israel, and it instantly, got installed it all over the place. Of course, in the U.S., that whole process got messed up by the innovation, the committee, for that Trump put together. But that's a whole different discussion. And my point is that tons of hospitals, institutions really just became very fast adopters of new ideas. So companies like, as I mentioned before, Karenware, which had a couple million in sales and was doing great, suddenly did a slight pivot, started making masks, and suddenly their sales went up 50x. And that is not unusual. Even Direct Shifts, another one of our companies, which did temporary physician staffing. Well, what do you need in a crisis? You need to be able to move doctors around and find doctors, the right kind of doctors, whatever. So their business tripled. And it's been like that for Safe Health, which has an app that tells you about your STD status, puts it on your dating profile as a validation methodology of hotel health play. They now actually have a COVID version, so you can show somebody on your phone your COVID status and be validated by Quest or what have you. So for so
Have
many
you also found that the FDA has been very favorable and friendlier?
Well, they've always been very friendly with us. I mean, Bakul Patel, who's now, one of the top guys there, was a junior attorney back in 2012 when PayPal tried to shut us down for basically pretending they're the FDA. So I called the FDA, I called Bakul, and Bakul got on the phone and he got PayPal to say, put their tail between their legs and leave us alone. Because, basically we're doing pre-marketing, promotion or whatever, support. So yeah, and of course with Amy Abernathy from Flatiron in charge too. I mean, it's really, they're a super positive organization these days. It's still a challenge to get through stuff. EAUs are not as easy to come by. We actually, one of the things that we started doing early this year is we actually have a sales organization for these innovations, because we have so many relationships with so many organizations, everybody from FEMA to, your kid's elementary school. We have been packaging and promoting and selling different innovations. We started out with Karenware, pushing them into everybody, but now we actually have a device that can take, it doesn't really matter, but basically kills COVID in the air, airborne COVID. And so that's being installed in train stations and hospitals and what have you, through our MedStartr.direct subsidiary. So anyway.
So and based on the data that you're seeing from the platform and the people that you engage with, what are the top 2 categories post-COVID that people are interested in?
That is a good question.
I mean, aside from like a broader digital health, like maybe go down 30,000 feet.
Digital health is been booming. Obviously, I think people say that it's going to top $12 billion in investment this year, increasing investment by I think 30% from previous years, which were also records. So I mean, obviously, digital health is huge. Data is obviously the black gold. I mean, as you can see, MedStartr is doing that. We take the data and we use it for investing information, right? So, but in patient health, okay, your 7-minute visit with the doctor, it really wasn't doing the job. It was sick care. You'd show up when you actually needed it. So prevention is probably one of the biggest spaces that we see really opening up. Our latest investment, called Your Coach, actually is a consolidation play for the wellness space, which so we're very excited about that. Also started by Eugene Barakovich, who's a guy like me or Joe that does these events and aggregation plays too. Really amazing company. Anyway, my point,
any relation to Aaron Brockovich?
We wish.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm going to winnow us down to just me and Alex as we close. Alex, I want to give you the chance to tell folks, most of the people that I have referred your way have said, I'm looking to raise money.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, you want to take a look at MedStartr, but I haven't really heard you say that by connecting with you, they're likely to find money. They're likely to find resources, and Incubator, facilities and experts with whom they can get some counsel. What do you feel now is the best way to represent your value proposition to people who should know about MedStartr?
Well, we really incubate and accelerate the startups that do well in our programs. So it doesn't help them. It doesn't.
Characteristic of programs that, pardon me, products, devices that do well in your programs is what? They tend to be what?
They tend to be ready, right? And batteries included types. So, so if I give you 100 things to do during your campaign, and you do a lot of them, and you get some traction, right? You know, we will be there to help you follow through and to help make those things happen. Money, time, effort, what have you. Now, if you already are successful, you're a second time or third time founder, and you already have, you know, your own VCs, you know, lining up with capital, we might not be the place for you. And honestly, we have seen so many of those situations not go well. I think one of the reasons that venture capital is not very successful on average, you know, doing worse than the S&P 500, is because it is a follower, you know, type activity. Most VCs follow other VCs who have this VC network of friends and compatriots, and they say, "Oh, I've got this good deal, and you know, let me do that." You know, and so we don't come from that. We come from the actual data of who is generating interest. So a lot of people don't need us. And honestly, a lot of those investments might not be great investments in our opinion, because the data is dirty, right? It's not coming from this has merit. It's coming from, oh shit, I put money into this company and I'm not sure they're ever going to get off the ground. So let me call my friends, right? So that old boys network isn't
Let me call
good.
my friends so they put money in so I can get my money out.
That's the traditional approach to sort
Some
of
friends.
VC teaming. Well, that's why they don't do that well. That's why you see the Theranoses of the world, you know, being successful, because they get hype and they get all that stuff. Now, granted, we do the same thing with respect to the companies that are validated on our platform. But the people who come to us know that we are hypercritical. We invest in 1 out of 700 companies that comes through our platform. And we only do it if we've got a lot of good data and they pass due diligence. We had a
You've
great
used
company.
data a number of times. What kind of data are you talking about?
So our algorithm hits 126 different metrics, everything from 7 that hit on grit, you know, how hard
I'm
somebody's
sorry,
working.
grit?
Grit.
Did
You
you
know,
say
hardworkingness, perseverance.
Okay.
Perseverance, is that a better word? And grit is
Okay, that's
definitely
fine.
kind
I'm
of
just
one
like, I don't know how you'd
Yes,
say
I do.
algorithm, and then you say something that's more qualitative than quantitative.
Okay, let's take honesty. We also have 8 metrics that cover honesty. So let's say you come into our site and we track your IP address and we look at what you do, right? And let's say that same IP address does the same things, you know, 37 times every 2 minutes and 37 seconds, you know, for the last 2 hours of a contest. This actually happened. We track that, you know, not just the IP address, but the patterns of what things that they're doing on the site, who they are. We can dig a little bit deeper if we have to. And that will get negative points in the MedStartr algorithm, right? And that company will get disqualified from the contest because they were cheating. You know, now granted, there is NAT, address translation makes everything look like one IP address, but then, you know, then we track, you know, once a project gets flagged, then we run other tests on it, and yeah, that happens.
Did
We
you
actually,
say Katie had a project that you had as part of your fund?
no, Katie is a mentor in our network. So she comes to our events, she helps judge sometimes. If I have a project that hits her areas of expertise, I'll send it to her. The system will automatically send her some stuff, and she'll weigh in on it. And as all of our mentors, and one of your, I think Jonathan asked earlier, why the mentors do it. And hey, Katie, and you know, that's one of the problems that I always saw. I was mentoring various accelerators before opening my own, and I kind of felt a little taken advantage of, right? Because I was giving my thoughts, my ideas, you know, my support to this other organization that had a fund and was doing okay from the fund. And one of my mentors said to me a couple of months ago, saying, well, you know, I get paid $500 an hour for this. You know, I mean, why would I be doing it for you for free? And that's great. But the reason that she's paid $500 an hour for it now is because she came to an event called Mission Physician Transition back in 2018, and then became a mentor in our network. We put her on stage. She came to some of our review committees, and now she actually knows how to evaluate startups and is the CMO of a startup.
Katie, can you tell us a little bit about your experience as a mentor in the network?
I think Katie, you got to turn your audio off.
Hi. Well,
You-
actually,
You can talk. You can talk about the disco ball if you want.
okay. So a couple years ago, I had my own intellectual property that I was considering trying to get off the ground. So I went to a couple meetups, went to a dance party that they had. It was really a lot of fun. But then I just got busy studying for boards and sort of put it on the back burner. But you know, Alex stayed in touch and just asked, you know, he asked me if I wanted to come and judge, especially on some of the, you know, when they have like a lot of devices or really sort of very heavily sort of like medical stuff. For example, there was a guy that had a test for, oh my God, what can I say the word right now? Preeclampsia. And I, you know, like I think like some other people, they might not think that that's very interesting, but I thought that was extremely interesting. So I've just been judging recently.
So yeah, so she's typical of her experience that, you know, people who have more than one thing going on. It's a good way to stay involved.
And Katie, when you judge you have of course, a medical background. How are you, what counsel do you give versus some of the other judges? How is your contribution incremental to what would happen if you hadn't been there?
Well, I think that, for example, on the last session, I voted for some of the ones that were less popular, but I think it's because they were more medically solid, in my opinion. Even they weren't very glamorous or interesting, I think, to the average person, you know, not like curing depression with the brainwave type of thing, but I could absolutely like see the medical utility. It's
Send
And what became of them?
my contest.
somebody else.
What became of the ones that you thought had promise?
Well, I really, like I said, I really like the preeclampsia test because that's a huge problem. If you can detect that early, you know, you can save a lot of lives. Because
And are you in touch with that company now? Do you give them counsel? Are you on their advisory board, something like that?
Well,
no, not yet.
so think of it as people who guess, you know, the right number of jelly beans in a jelly bean jar at the state fair, right? So, you know, one person wins the jelly bean jar, but on average, their guesses, if you average them out, is actually going to be the closest thing, you know, to a predictive value of the jelly beans in the jar. It doesn't mean that everybody who guesses how many jelly beans are in the jar are going to, you know, get the jelly beans, so to say. And Katie's got her boards to study for. She's got physicians she works with. She's, you know, applying
Busy
for
woman.
residency. Yeah, exactly. So we basically take a little piece of their mind on one day and then collectively average that out with everybody else. And then our team moves on it. And then if the mentors want to be more involved, they can get more involved. We will query some of them we think that are going to be relevant to be involved. But mostly it's some of it a passive network other than the active judging that we ask them to do.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
we do have a new program we call a venture partner program, whereby the ones who are most active can actually be rewarded with shares in our GP. I don't know if you guys know how GPs work, but they're the ones that actually make the money on
GP
picking
stands
good
for
investment.
general.
Like general partners. So when you have a fund, all the investors come in as limited partners. So let's say you own 1% of my fund, and my fund is returning $10 for every dollar that you invested. Well, of those $10, only 8 of them are going to go back to the LPs. 2 of them go to the GP. So if we turn $100 million into, let's
And
say,
how do you
$30 million,
decide who's earned that privilege? How do you decide?
so, you know, we capture all data from all events that we can, and obviously all judging data, all involvement data, all share data, all that goes back to an individual. And going back to also one of your previous questions, you don't have a value add for mentors. So just like we created the MedStartr index score for teams, we're now working on making a MedStartr index score for people on the platform. So if you remember the website Clout, where you could see your
They
Clout
don't
score.
exist anymore, do they?
No, they got bought and shut down. So, which is pretty typical. So basically we're going to make a cloud score for MedStartr mentors and anybody on the platform. We think that that'll increase engagement, but it's a constant, innovation challenge of what do you do to capture people's interest and motivate them to be involved. So these are two new things. Well, one thing we haven't created yet that we're working on, and one thing that that is new that
Thanks
people
for
are
coming
involved
in
in. So
and sharing
now
that with
Paulo
us.
Machado, also one of our investors and one of our mentors, he's been the most involved mentor this year. So he's going to earn probably like 1,000 shares in our GP just for doing that.
Thank you.
And there's a bunch of others
Turn
who've
your
been very
camera.
involved too.
I
Pardon?
want to conclude with two questions for you, Alex. One of them is, what kinds of companies, what's characteristic of someone that you would tell us, yeah, send that person my way? There will be some that you're like, no, that's not right for them. But yeah, if you know anyone who is blank, tell them about me and MedStartr. Who would that be?
So the ones we get involved with are the ones that we see the inflection point happening. So Triage is a great example. They had one pilot, and so they had their proof of concept. They weren't making any money. Some of their founders had quit even. They entered our AMA contest back in 2016, and within 90 days they had 12 hospitals signing up for their EMS solution. So they had a product, they were ready, they had a pretty good team in place, and they just sort of come to that point where they're ready to take off, right? So they entered one of our contests, they won, okay, and then suddenly they were the darling of healthcare. They were held up on a
So
pedestal.
you're saying, let me see if I can narrow that down. A company that is got solid concept and they're ready to commercialize.
Exactly. So on the other hand, companies like Direct Shifts, so Direct Shifts, the hat that I was wearing before, had been coming to our event for probably eight events for 18 months. And I got to know the CEO, this guy, Cy Thurmerlu, and, he had founders quit and whatever. And I would give him advice and tell him that, just, hearing their suggestions. So we love talking to entrepreneurs, helping them. There's probably about 80 that I talk to on a regular basis that, get a little bit of advice here and there, and we push and we promote as we can. And then when they get to that point, like Direct Shifts, when they had their first 1,000 doctors sign up for their locum tenens hiring solution that was automated and a better deal for the doctors and the hospitals who were hiring, that's when we said, okay, Cy, let's see your valuation and your real due diligence data. And then we invested a couple of months later, and they grew 4x in the first 3 months. So we invested it at I think a $5 million valuation, and then literally their next round went off at a $20 million valuation. And now they're profitable and growing all the time. And so we like to think that we know when a company is going to make it. So even if they come to us when they've got a first prototype, and we think that they're ready to have a significant value bump and that we can help them take them to the next level, those are the ideal companies we can help. And we've helped clothing companies, staffing companies, device companies.
The last
digital
question for you
therapeutics.
today, Alex, is what's working today for medical device companies looking to make some traction as they're looking to raise money? What's working today?
So the biggest thing I see is that companies know that their lunch will be eaten by the innovators, and that the big companies, the Medtronics of the world, are actively searching for those devices that they can put into their portfolio. So that makes for a good exit strategy for the inventors, because not every inventor wants to run a Dexcom.
Right.
So if you figure out a solution that a Baxter, Abbott, whoever can take to the next level and will have some fear of, and you get your IP straight and you build it and you start showing the prototypes, and then what happens these days is what I call a IAMC, an Innovative Academic Medical Center, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, Presby in New York, Cedars-Sinai. They have accelerators and incubator programs and venture funds, especially like the Mount Sinai Venture Fund. They'll get involved with the startup and fund a pilot. But then that also is one of these moments of value creation or destruction, because the really big IAMCs tend to want to own the IP. And so they can really just wreak havoc on a company. But a good deal is hugely valuable. I mean, One of our companies just finished a study at Cleveland Clinic, and their valuation, bumped up 10x again.
Not bad.
Well, it's good work if you can get it.
Ladies and gentlemen, my wealthy friend, Alex Thea,
Only on paper. Only on paper.
only on paper, founder of MedStartr. And I don't even know what to say about that. So we're going to conclude this call very quickly.
This is the 2021 vision goggles. So we want to go from from this.
You can't see out of them.
No, I can't. But it's glasses aren't really to see; they're to be seen.
Alex Fair, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Alex. I'll see you all next week
Thank
from
you,
my
Joe.
new location,
You're the
not
best.
far from here.
Yeah.
See you next week, folks. Thank
Okay.
you, Alex.
Thank you, Joe. You're awesome.
Yes, I am. Thanks. Bye.